Hello and welcome to this episode of Wise Human. Today I have with me Katt Grant. She is a somatic and human design coach. She takes her clients on the journey to embody their full authenticity while integrating the wisdom from their childhood trauma. Katt gently guides her clients to the root of their self-sabotaging behaviors, empowering them to get unstuck and step into the fullness of who they are, creating life of meaning and fulfillment that they desire. Welcome, Katt.
Thank you so much. So good to be here with you, Nicole.
I'm so excited to sit down with you and have this conversation. It's been on my mind for a while of inviting you, and I'm glad that it's happening now. I'm sure it's in the perfect divine timing.
Absolutely. Yes. And I love that you mentioned that. I feel like whenever we allow things to happen in divine timing, it's always hits who it needs to, or reaches who it needs to reach, and that type of thing. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, to get started, what led you down this path back to the beginning? What were the key points that got you here?
Yeah. Well, I I mean my own upbringing and story of my own wounding. I think that's always what brings us to the work we do. Um, so I lived a life that was very disconnected from myself, very not self-aware, not embodied, um, not connected to my emotions. And it was only when I started therapy and I remember when I started therapy, my therapist would ask, "How do you feel?" And I wouldn't even be able to answer that question. I was so disconnected, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. But just living in a constant survival mode. And um, therapy was really beautiful, and it helped create so much self-awareness around some of my childhood traumas, which led to other traumas. And but when I started receiving coaching and going to coaching, that's really when things started to change in my life. And I was able to change my patterns and take those small steps to actually change my life. And um, that's where I really fell in love with coaching. It took me a little while to own that I wanted to be a coach. I would have it reflected back to me in some different women's groups I was in. And eventually one day I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a coach. I found my inner freedom. I was looking for freedom on the outside in all of the wrong places. Alcohol was one of those things. And when I hit rock bottom, and that's when I quit drinking. It's when I really went deep into receiving coaching, getting coaching, and committing to myself, I think, for the first time in my life. In that moment of hitting rock bottom, I asked myself the question, who am I living my life for? And it wasn't for me. It was, a life of people pleasing, of codependency, of thinking of everyone else's needs above my own needs. And in that moment, really choosing to put myself first. And that, freedom I found on the inside, and doing the work and creating the changes and taking your power back and thinking about your own needs and putting them first, giving from your own overflow of your cup rather than a depleted cup. And coming to an understanding of when I follow my dreams, my passions, that's when I can actually give the most to those around me. And yeah, so eventually I came to want to be a coach myself, wanting to empower others on this journey. I think it's fairly common when you wake up and start the inner journey and find your authentic voice and your authenticity and that inner freedom. Like, I wanted to share it with others. I wanted to share others, like, the life of joy and fulfillment that I was able to create for myself. And I took a year-long coaching program, which was a deep dive into, we got to do all of the tools on ourselves and learn them. And there was somatics in there. And I just fell in love with somatic coaching because trauma is held in the body. And yes, talk therapy, mindset work is super helpful. And really the depth of the change that I found in my life was through somatic coaching and working with the body and the trauma that is held in the body. And and working with clients that way. So that's a kind of the short form of, feel free to ask any more questions of how I got into coaching.
I'm curious, you speak about therapy and coaching, and it sounds like you had done some work with therapy prior to coaching, but it sounds like the major transition or transformation happened for you in coaching. What was the difference? Were you at a different point in your life where you could make those leaps, or was it the approach?
For me, it was the approach. So, and that being said, I did talk therapy. So I want to be clear, there are many other forms of, there is somatic therapy, for example. There's a lot of different forms of therapy, which are more embodied. And the therapy I did was talk therapy, which was super beneficial. I had zero self-awareness. So it really did help me piece together my own life story and put together a lot of things. And there's always a light and a shadow of both. There's a shadow of coaching as well, but the shadow of therapy is, if you're looking for problems, there's always more problems you're going to find. And you can kind of just end up looping in the problems. Coaching is where I felt empowered to create change in my life and to start changing my patterns. So it was awareness and action. What's the action step related to finding this awareness? Whereas when I was in therapy, it was awareness. There wasn't action tied to it. And the coaching that I had, coaching, there is always an action step tied to it. So, and that's where my life started to shift, when I was taking action based on an awareness of a pattern or awareness of something I was doing, and taking that one small action. And that's where all the big change comes from, is literally taking one step at a time to create the change you desire. And then you look back in 3 months and you're like, wow, so much has changed in 3 months. And I think a lot of people, I'll speak for myself, like always wants the big change and the big leaps. But honestly, and that does happen sometimes, but so much of it are these tiny, small steps along the way that is the big change, that creates the big change. And that's what really helped me to start. I think I really felt stuck, and I was stuck in a lot of self-judgment around, when you're unaware, there's like this bliss of like, I didn't see any of my patterns. So, I was like, life is like, I'm great, life is good, but in reality, there's a lot of problems. So then when I created awareness, I was very self-critical. There was a lot of self-judgment. There was, and I didn't know how to, that trapped me more in the patterns, but now I could see my patterns, but I didn't know how to change them. I didn't know how to get out of them. And that's where coaching, and honestly, probably one of the biggest shifts I've had in my life was really learning self-compassion, because love and compassion heals everything. And it's so much easier to change when all that energy we have that is going into judging ourselves, criticizing ourselves, that takes a lot of energy. So when that is freed up, when you can be compassionate with yourself, all of that energy is freed up to actually create the changes you want in your life. And that was one of the big things coaching did for me, and I learned through coaching, was self-compassion, and creating those action steps.
What was the first step that you took to creating compassion for yourself? Like if somebody's listening and they don't have compassion, they have a really harsh inner critic, what are a few things that they could do to begin to shift that narrative?
Mm-hmm. It's different for everyone. For me, I had this. So how it's funny how I just mentioned about like it's this all the small steps and the small changes, but actually one of the few times I've had like a huge up level was in my coaching program, and we did self-forgiveness. And I thought I had, I'd blamed myself for a lot of my trauma, and I had done a lot of self-forgiveness work around it. But there'd been another piece around that I unconsciously had still been blaming myself or held shame around. And when I did a self-forgiveness process, this tool in my coaching program that we use around, and not just like saying a forgiveness, but deep somatic in your body and your heart and soul, doing self-forgiveness work. It was this monumental shift into self-love and self-compassion. It was like I fell in love with myself in that moment. It was a wild shift of, that like warm, fuzzy feeling you get towards your cat or your dog or your best friend, or like that genuine just love. I felt that warm, fuzzy feeling inside myself for the first time in my life. I'm like, oh, this is self-love. This is what self-love feels like. I can literally feel the love. And that self-love and self-compassion. So I had a bit of social anxiety when I first started quit drinking alcohol, and saw all my patterns, and my social anxiety came from my own, it's always a projection, right? My own judgment of myself, and then projecting that other people were judging me. And so when I had this shift, my social anxiety went away like that. And I haven't had it. I mean, it was only about a year that I struggled with it, but haven't had it since. And that was, so self-forgiveness is a very, very powerful tool or practice to do with yourself to reach a level of self-compassion. It's something I use in my coaching as well. Forgiveness around judgments we hold of ourselves, judgments of patterns we're stuck in, judgments of the way we're showing up. So it can be used in small ways. So it can be a very powerful tool, and a tool that I use whenever I catch myself judging myself as well, right? I think understanding why we do what we do is a very important. It helps so much to be self-compassionate, because self-criticism can be like, oh, why am I procrastinating on this thing that I really want to do, this project I want to start or something. And I'm judging myself or being critical of myself for not doing it. Whereas when we look at this pattern, and our patterns are always linked to childhood, under the age of 7, they're always linked to something from childhood. And when you can go back and do inner child work and see where that pattern originates from, and you're like, oh, as that child, this pattern of procrastination or of overwhelm or of whatever that pattern is, and bringing awareness to it and seeing it from that child's perspective, with an understanding that we live out of our patterns until we upgrade them in adulthood. But going back and doing the work and seeing where they originate from really helps with self-compassion, and actually understanding that it's not the adult version of you who is acting in this way, but your inner child that is acting in this pattern. And we live out of these childhood patterns until we bring awareness to them and integrate them into your life. So just knowing where they originate from, when you can find the source of your patterns, that really helps weave in self-compassion and take away that judgment, because it makes sense. Like, all of our patterns actually make sense. They're always linked to a trauma or to something that happened in childhood. So there's always sense in it. And for me and for my clients, that's a huge piece for me. Like, oh, if I can understand why I'm showing up that way, it's so much easier for me to have compassion.
So finding the source of why you're acting in the way that you are is a step that somebody can take to have a little more compassion for themselves. And is there a
Mm-hmm.
process to going back and finding the source of that?
Yeah, so I use somatic processes often, which is linking the sensations in your body and seeing if a memory comes up. You can also do it from the mind. So by asking yourself, when is the first time I remember acting in this way? Or when is the first time I remember like this pattern being in my life? So you can sometimes access it that. You can go a lot deeper with somatics, because often our minds are limited to our logical reasoning, right? Whereas often with somatics, when you follow a sensation in the body, a memory will pop up that my clients will have no idea that was related to the pattern or what was going on. And it's always related in some way. So working with a somatic practitioner is a beautiful way. I recommend it for everyone. And you can also do it with yourself and ask yourself, when is the first time I remember this pattern or this feeling, or what feels familiar around this issue that keeps coming up from childhood? And that can be another way to bring more awareness and to trace it back.
Can you share more about, one, what somatic healing is for anybody who doesn't know, and then two, how you trace those sensations?
Mm-hmm. So somatic just means soma, it's the body. And so somatic coaching is working with sensations in the body as you're coaching a client as issues come up. And so in a session, you'll be talking about a current issue, right? It's always linked to something current, a current issue that's been happening. And when I ask a client, what are the sensations related to how they're feeling in their body? And so you follow a sensation, a feeling. Could be a tension in the chest. It could be a tight knot at the bottom of your stomach. It could be a tightness in your shoulder, whatever's showing up in the body. And there's different practices you can do. Some are just opening to them, because most of us haven't been taught how to feel our emotions, how to feel our sensations. So often I'll speak for myself. I ran from feeling my feelings my whole life because that was too scary. So we numb. We can use alcohol. There's addiction to work, addiction to food, binge watching Netflix. There's so many ways that instead of actually just dropping into our bodies and feeling a tightness in your chest, or anxiety, or whatever that is, many people, and myself for most of my life, would numb or have these coping mechanisms. So part of somatic can just be dropping into the body and feeling a sensation, and knowing that sensations and emotions last for 90 seconds. So if we're not looping a story that keeps creating the anxiety, a story that keeps creating the fear, whatever, if we actually drop down into our body without the story and just breathe into that tightness in your chest, it won't last longer than 90 seconds. So that is freedom. That in itself right there is freedom. I remember the first time doing it and being like my head coach would talk about this and I would be like, okay, I get it in my mind, right? But the first time I embodied that and actually had that experience of, oh, I can feel my emotion and I'm not going to die. Like, I don't have to keep running from this. I don't have to numb. I can literally feel it. And within 90 seconds, it dissipates, it dissolves. Because everything just wants acceptance. And it's the resistance to our emotions, to our feelings that hurt us, not the actual feelings themselves. So just learning that and doing somatic practices around dropping in and feeling, and that you're okay, and that it actually just moves on its own. That is freedom in itself. That is a somatic practice. Another somatic, I mean, there's so many. Breath work is a somatic practice. Breath work can bring up old trauma, it can bring up things in your body. So it's really anything in the body. How I was talking about it earlier is following a sensation, a tightness in your chest, and seeing if a memory comes up. And even myself, I'll get somatic coaching when there's something. It's really hard to do this on your own, because being in a held space with another the loving presence of a human being to hold space and to witness and to guide you through this process is very vital and important, especially if there is trauma, because it can bring up memories, and it's important to have a safe space. You can do it on your own, but you might also not feel safe enough to access these deeper memories. So memories can pop up related to that sinking knot in your stomach. And this random memory from childhood can pop up, and then it's an opportunity to heal and do deeper healing from the wound, what you needed as a child, which then integrates and shifts from that place happen in so much more of a powerful way than mindset work, than understanding it from the mind only versus actually going into the body and linking it to something in childhood that happened. And it doesn't even have to be traumatic. It could just be a memory that you weren't heard, but that 5-year-old who wasn't heard. And, kids are narcissistic in the sense that as a child, we think everything is about us, right? So that child who wasn't heard then has a core story of, I'm not worthy, or a core wound of, I'm unlovable. And if you can go back and see it from that 5-year-old's perspective and do what did that 5-year-old need to hear? What can you give that 5-year-old, and speak to them and do some deeper healing. And then the integration that happens from that is so powerful. And your ability to then create shifts in your life after a somatic session, which just does this deeper work. And it's hard to explain the depth until you really experience it. But even me, myself, every time after a somatic process where something deep came up, like boom, like so many shifts in my life that I'm able to just show up in such a stronger way. And you can't link it from the mind. It's just like, oh, that deeper healing really set something. So yeah, that's a little bit of an overview of somatics.
Yeah, I feel like I can personally relate to intellectualizing and, coming from the brain and really thinking about things and seeing patterns and how they happen. But until you actually feel them, which is like the work I've been doing the last year or two, is like getting into the feelings of things. That's when things really start to shift.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm curious what made you take that step into being courageous enough to feel, because it takes courage when most of our lives we've been avoiding the feeling.
I think I was just sick of the same story. Like, why am I doing these things that I don't want to do, but I'm repeating this pattern or these patterns that are kind of keeping me stuck and not allowing me to move forward and do the things I really want to do in my life. So I was like, okay, similar story to yours, right? Like, okay, traditional talk therapy doesn't really seem to be really cutting into it, I've had a lot of progress with talk therapy for sure. I'm not knocking that, but I think in addition to that, getting into the body has made a huge difference and really doing inner child work as well. And, kind of what you were talking about, but sitting with the inner child and what do you need? Like, I'll even just check in with her and be like, okay, what do you need today? What do you want? Oh, you want to go swing on the swings? Okay, we're going to go swing on the swings. And it's so healing to have that relationship that she didn't always have when she was younger, little Nicole. I actually, okay, I'm going to share a little bit more, but I did a breathwork session, I don't know, sometime in the last few months. And in that, I realized that I never felt love as a child, which was like, oh my gosh. And I felt really bad for little Nicole, and I was really kind of pissed and upset. Like, what? Like, how could you be so heartless? And then realizing, right, that people do the best they can and they're giving love the way they can give love. And you're not always matched up to receive it. So yeah, that was probably the big, like a real big eye opener of like, okay, even more inner child work to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that and how you describe the range of emotions as well. The being angry about it and feeling pissed about it um and also being able to show up and give your inner child, little Nicole, that love that she didn't experience. And it's all such an important part, like to allow ourselves to be angry, to feel the resentment, the what like and often, people try to spiritually bypass. Oh, I'll forgive and I'm going to be an adult and yes, get there, but don't skip the step of feeling the anger, feeling the resentment, feeling the hurt from that little Nicole who didn't feel loved, and the fact that you can name that and own that. And then as your adult self, be like, you know, people have different capacities to love, and you weren't able to receive maybe the love that they were trying to give to you, but you also felt her pain that she wasn't able to feel as a child because that probably felt too scary. And to give little Nicole that love that she needed and needs, and for you always inside out, right, to show up and love yourself, that's your power, because you don't need anything on the outside. You've got it. And so now you can be open to love, but from a place of you're already full of your own love, and you can accept love versus needing love from an outside source because you don't feel loved. And that's the power of the inside work, right? Is that we give everything that we need so that we're not relying on things from the outside from this place of need. So super powerful.
Yeah, that's, as you said earlier, that is the work to fill our own cup from the inside out, because it doesn't really matter. When you're in that place, nothing external really affects you. Whatever somebody says, if they're like, "Oh, you're incompetent." Okay, if I don't think I'm incompetent, that's not going to affect me. Just like if you're like, "I hate your blue hair." Well, yeah, I don't have blue hair. That's not going to affect me. So, yeah,
100%.
the inner work is so, so important. And then within that, it allows you to trust yourself and to step into your gifts and have that confidence. So, I'd love to hear what that transition was for you, and when you realized, like, well, you already talked about when you realized you were going to be a coach. But what has the process been for you in being a coach? Like, have you faced any blocks since you started coaching?
I think there's always blocks along the way, especially I think entrepreneurship and romantic partnership are the two biggest vehicles for self-growth, because they're just our mirrors for what we need to work through. And in entrepreneurship, you're continuously at your growth edge, right? And growing and expanding, and there's going to be fear and self-doubt that come up. and it's to expect it versus wanting it to go away. Like when I'm playing, when I'm expanding my growth edges, and, which is versus being in my comfort zone, but really expanding my growth edges, there's going to be self-doubt. There's going to be fear. And I think my relationship with those has just gotten better when it comes up, and I'm able just to, when doubt comes up, breathe into that, feel it in my body, and breathe into my inner knowing of the gifts I have to share in this world, So, and that's constant, that inner knowing of the power of my somatic coaching, that beautiful healing space I really can hold for my clients. There's a deep knowing there, right? And so when I am looping in self-doubt and fear, well, I mean, I also get coaching, right? So I'm a coach. I think it's important for all coaches to also have coaches, because we always have our own stuff. And of course, I coach myself and use the tools. But for sure, I mean, when I was just starting out and not having as many clients as maybe my ego mind said that I wanted to have or needed to have, feelings of inadequacy, or of, the victim mindset of, I don't know how to get clients, which is such a ego lie, because there are so many ways. And, the victim mindset is, I don't know how. And the growth mindset is, there's so many different ways out there. Let me test and trial and follow my intuition and see what lights me up and find the way that works for me, and yeah, so I mean, I love being an entrepreneur, because it's always brings up there's so much growth that's able to happen in it. And I think for me, really looking at it like that, like appreciating the growth that comes from when I'm on my growth edges, and trusting. I mean, my spiritual journey has really just been flourishing a lot lately, and deeper trust in the universe and life's process, and understanding that I don't need to have all the answers from my limited mind, but knowing that when I'm acting in alignment from a place of abundance and love and the desire to share my gifts, everything will work out. Like, I don't need to know me personally, I don't create a business plan or strategy. I'm very I just follow my intuition, and I take the next aligned step, because that step will lead me to the next step, which will lead me to the next step. And it's like that saying that I don't need to see the whole staircase to start. I just need to take that first step, and it evolves and it grows. And can I love the ride? Can I love the surprise and delight that comes from just the openness and following my heart and my soul, and that deep trust that knows, I mean, we all are here with gifts, and it is our duty to share them, right? It is our duty to share them. And when I share mine, it allows someone else to share theirs, just like so many people, by them sharing their gifts, podcasters like yourself and coaches and healer, like all the people who positively impacted my life because they stepped into sharing their gifts. Here I am stepping into sharing mine, which is going to open. It's like this beautiful positive ripple effect. And that is the beauty of life, and remembering that and coming back to that. Fear can be there, doubt can be there, and it comes up from time to time, and it's all a part of it. But coming back to that grounded inner knowing and having that why, I mean, that's the most powerful thing.
Yes, yes, yes. You're speaking to my soul. That is something that I truly believe. We all have a unique gift to share with this world. Even if it looks very similar to somebody else's, like the way we present it, our experience is different. The way we deliver, and the right people will find you, the people that need your voice. Like, it's our responsibility to speak up, to share those gifts, because like you said, it's the ripple effect. We're healing humanity together. And your purpose could be a podcast, it could be a coach, it could be that you garden and you give your neighbors tomatoes. Like, it doesn't have to be like some, big thing, but that you're contributing and you're doing the thing that you love. I think following your joy is the most important thing. And we get so distracted from that because society, especially Western society, tells us we need X, Y, and Z, the original American dream quotes that really isn't fulfilling for most people. And awesome if it is for you, like go for it, do that. But I think it crushes a lot of people's dreams, and then they're not sharing their gifts and the whole world suffers from that.
Mm-hmm.
So oh,
Yeah, I was just going to jump on that. And, I think it depends where you come from. Two people wanting a big house, that could be authentic for someone, right? And it could be from the ego from someone else of, oh, I want a big house because my neighbor has a big house and I need to prove that I'm just as good as this person. Or I don't need this big house because that's a societal status thing, you know?
mhm.
And so I love that, following your joy, following your aliveness. And that is what creates fulfillment, right? When we follow our joy and share our gifts it's always interlinked, right? Like what brings one person joy is different to the next person because that's not random. It's linked to our gifts. It's linked to what we're meant to share in this world. And that's what creates fulfillment versus this, I need to get XYZ in life because that's what from the outside in I've been told will make me successful. That's never going to be fulfilling. And so I love you mentioned that because I think so many of us in society blindly follow this external outside in of what it means to have a good life versus going inside out of what lights us up, what brings me joy, what fulfills me. And that is so much more powerful than anything on the external.
So if somebody doesn't know what their gift is, they can follow their joy. That's a path there. Is there anything else that they can do to find that gift?
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say gift. I think we have different gifts, and I think they can also evolve through our lifetime. So yeah, it's following, and I also do human design. So with the different energy types, it's something a little bit different. So with one energy type, the generators, it really is following your joy, your excitement. With projectors, it's more about like they're so interested in a specific topic and it's something that they just can research or dig into all day long. Like that's where they're meant to go. But I think joy and interest and excitement, like I think that covers it, but it can be slightly different for different people. Manifestors get like a nudge from the universe, but it's like this internal, they can't reason with it, but it's like, oh, go do this thing or follow that. And so, so it comes in slightly different ways, and those always are the breadcrumbs. So
Yeah, can
yeah,
we?
sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I was just going to say, can we talk about human design? Can you share what human design is and how we can use it as a tool?
Absolutely. I love human design. It has been such a powerful tool in my life and in people's lives I've introduced it to. So it is a part spiritual, part scientific system that includes the chakras, astrology, the I Ching, the life of tree, and combines these systems. And basically, there are 5 different energy types. So we all use our energy in slightly different ways. But what I love about human design, it doesn't box you in. It doesn't say all generators are like this, or so the types are generators, manifesting generators, manifestors, projectors, and reflectors. But there's so many nuances and gifts within, and basically what it says is we are all unique beings, which I love because I have never done well with being fit into a box. And there are different ways that we can use our energy that helps bring us into alignment and helps us find that flow, and our gifts. Like human design is a map. It's basically a roadmap of who you came here to be. And I have never found a system that I've resonated with so deeply that when I read my human design, I was like, that's me. Like, that is me. And the power of it is just has given me permission. It's named things that I unconsciously knew but hadn't named about myself. And that in itself has given me permission to just show up fully. So for me, I'm a reflector. Only 1% of the population are reflectors. And we have all open chakras, open energy systems. And we're basically, they call us the chameleons of society. So I really pick up on the energy of who I'm with, the energy of the environments, and it brings out different parts of me, which a lot of people can relate to. If you have an open G center chakra, you will also be a little bit different in different situations, but reflectors are like that. So for me, just like fully being like, oh, I can be a totally different person with different people and in different environments, and that's energetically correct. And that's me living my design, because as a reflector, I'm a mirror back to people. I'm here to mirror back who you are and for you to see yourself in me. And to just like give myself permission to do that, to be that. Because the kind of societal conditioning is like, the story I'd heard was Tony Robbins. He is the same person on stage and he's the same person off stage. And that's the correct way to be, right? But not for reflectors. We are meant to be different in different situations. So it resonates and it lands, and the clients I've used it with, and when I do readings for people, one of the main powerful things about it is it's things that people innately know, gifts you deep down, you unconsciously know you have, but it puts a name to it, and then it gives you full permission to embody that gift. And it does show you what your main gifts are. One of my main gifts is being an adventurer and sharing my adventures with people. And I'm like, that's so true. I'm such an adventurer. I've lived and traveled all over the world, and had some wild adventures and crazy outdoor stories in my life. And like, yes, and that is correct for me, and to live an adventurous life and to share my stories. And so it's a really powerful tool to narrow down and show people what their gifts are as well. It's this beautiful map, but also how to use your energy correctly. So, and you're a generator, is that correct?
I'm a manifesting generator.
Manifesting
No,
generator.
am I a generator? I don't remember. I think.
Okay.
Wait, let me check my phone real quick.
Yeah. So, but those are both, they are different, but they're both manifesting generator is a subset of a generator. So for you, with
I think I'm
either way,
yeah,
generator, that's what I thought. So for you, it really is about following your joy, your aliveness, what lights you up. That's not random. That's the universe. Like, what lights you up and excites you is related to your path, and so if you just focus on that, you will live your purpose. You will share your gifts with the world. You will live your design. And there's all of these details, but if you just follow your energetic strategy, you'll live an aligned life. And and we're all different, right? And so it's what I love about it, is understanding that, because I think so much of the world, even in business and marketing, people are like, this is the way to market, this is the way to do, and it's like, oh, I hate that, because I'm like, no, it works for someone, it works for some people, but we're all different. So if
Mhm.
you follow the marketing strategy that lights you up and excites you, that's going to be aligned for you, right? For me, as a reflector, it's about waiting. I like give space and wait, and then like my intuition one day will just be like, that's the move, like that's the right thing. And so that's been deconditioning, is to give space, but so it's a beautiful tool to be able to come into alignment and to help decondition generators. And 70% of the population are generators, so it's an easy one to talk about because a lot of people can relate. But a lot of the conditioning is because generators are here to give light. You guys give the life force energy and lift others up, but the conditioning has been give to others from a place of self-sacrifice, and the reconditioning is when you do what lights you up and excites you and brings you joy, that's what creates this life force energy. And that's actually what lifts everyone up around you. Whereas when you do something that's a no, but you say yes to it, you actually depletes your energy, you get burnt out. And so it's a beautiful map to decondition all of these things we've been taught or told to be or do in society, and come back to who we authentically are, and come back to our innate joys, and gives you permission and self-permission, right? I give myself permission to be authentically me, knowing it is for the greater good of all.
Could you just briefly touch on the other few? I think there's four more.
Yes. So manifestors are 10% of the population, and a lot of the conditioning in society is for manifestors. So Nike, just do it, just go out and do it, go out and get what you want, is correct for manifestors, which are only 10% of the population. So manifestors have the universe. So the universe speaks to generators and manifesting generators through follow your joy, your excitement, your passion. That's your follow that. For manifestors, the universe will send them nudges, like a nudge, and it can't be explained from the mind. It can't be like, oh, I want this job because this title will look good and blah, 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 whatever explanation. It'll be like, oh, I want to go do this thing, or I want this job. And I can't explain why. That's a nudge. That's a nudge from the universe, where there's this idea or this thing that comes up and you can't explain it. You don't know where it's come from, but it's there. And the deconditioning for manifestors are to not people please. They have big energy. And so as children, often they were told to be smaller, to please others, to get permission to do something. And so for manifestors, it's to give themselves permission to follow those nudges, and they're the ones to start. So they initiate, and their strategy is to share it with others. And so other people will, so they're like a train driver, and their role is to say, hey, I'm going from Paris to London. Whoever wants to come hops on, whoever doesn't. And so they're the initiators, and they're and to follow those nudges is energetically correct, and to give themselves permission without needing permission from outside people is a big conditioning for them. And then we have, so manifesting generators are our form of generators, but manifesting generators are super multi-passionate people. So they have a lot of manifesting energy as well. And it is energetically the conditioning to get rid of is you got to start at point A and go to point B. And it's a linear process of life. And for manifesting generators, that is just not energetically correct. For them, it's like correct to do 100 things at the same time, and to follow this passion, and it's always about following what lights them up, but they don't have to finish things. They can start something, and maybe they learned the lesson they need to learn in that thing. So if they stop being excited by it and lit up by it, it's okay to stop, right? But the conditioning is you got to finish what you start, and blah, blah, blah. And And they're basically here to show the world what's possible because they have this life force energy and they have so many passions and interests. And they're really here to teach us that life can be done in such a bigger way than we're doing it right now. Projectors are the guides, and there's 20% of the population are projectors. They are the guides of society that are basically the little birds sitting on the tree, and they have a different perspective and they can see the other animals and they can see the direction of things and what's happening, and they have a different perspective than the bigger animals on the ground. And they also have less energy. They're not generators. They're not here to work 9 to 5s, but they're here to create more efficient systems, to guide people, to they see things in a very specific way. And whatever their niche is, whatever they find so interesting and fascinating. And it's to give yourself permission to go there, whatever you just find so fascinating that you could do all day and learn about all day. That's the area of life you're meant to guide others around. And it's a process of first seeing themselves and seeing the gifts they have so that others can recognize it in them, and for people to invite them to share their wisdom, for the people who are ready to hear the wisdom that they have to share. And then reflectors I talked about a little bit. And reflectors are interesting because we are so each reflector is a super different being, because we have all open energy centers, so all very different. And for reflectors, it's about being in the places and the environments that feel good, that make them feel good. And if you're in the right environment with the right people, that's where the opportunities will come and the synchronicities will come and the flow will come. And as I said, we're mirrors for other people. And reflectors are meant to be at the center of a community to reflect back the health of a community. And if the community is not in a good state, the reflector will be the first to feel not well and reflect that back. And if it's a healthy community, the reflector will be able to reflect that back. And reflectors have the most potential for wisdom because we can feel so deeply with our open energy centers. And the strategy is to wait and to not be in a rush, and to wait until repeated nudges from the universe come, and then act on those. So that's been a big conditioning, because we live in a society where it is go, 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 and doing is better than sitting still. And so with all these types, there are key pieces to decondition, and we can all see ourselves a little bit in each type, because we're all so multifaceted and we have different generator channels or projector channels or piece, and that's why there's so much depth to human design. But if you follow your strategy and your energy type, even without all of those details, you will be in alignment with. So it's this beautiful path, and it's really helped me to trust the process and to it's created a lot more alignment in my life.
And people can find their chart by going to, is it My Human Design?
Yeah, I love Jenna Zoe's work. So it's myhumandesign.com. There's other chart software online if you Google it as well. But she's great, and she has an app that gives a lot of information on the different types. So it's if you want to go deep, it's a great way to go deep into it. And so you've done a little bit with human design. I'm curious what your
Very little. Yeah. A few years ago, a friend mentioned it, and so I have the app on my phone. That's what I had to check. But yeah, I have the app on my phone, and I have looked at it and kind of read over things, and it makes sense, but I haven't dove into it or really studied it or practiced it. But the following my joy definitely resonates with me. Like when I'm in my joy, things just happen. Synchronicities happen. So it's a good reminder to keep doing those things and finding those things and making sure that I make time for them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And giving yourself permission to do that, and to
Mhm.
understand that when you follow your joy, it's literally the biggest gift you can give to the world. Because that's when synchronicities come for you. And that's how you share your, and really conditioning that. And it can be that, like, if that's all you take from human design, which is your strategy, everything else will fall into place. Getting rid of the no's in life and just following your full body yeses that excite you and light you up, like everything else will fall into place. So I
Mhm.
love that. And it can seem so simple. I have to keep going over my reflector stuff
Oh,
and remind myself, like, it's the simplest
yeah.
things are the hardest sometimes, right?
It's a lesson that I have seen, I have experienced, and then I forget, and then it comes back. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, 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 that is it. That's the magic." But yeah, so getting into a consistent pattern with that, but also having compassion with myself and knowing that life happens and it's cyclical and that's okay.
Yeah. And we're not always going to be in alignment. So even getting rid of that idea of, I want to, like, alignment isn't this like steady state. It's like this ebb and flow, and we get slightly off alignment. And through my journey, it's like I catch it sooner. Now I'm like, oh, like something's off. Where am I not aligned? And then I'm able to kind of come back into the alignment, and then you veer off a little and you catch it a little bit sooner next time. And so yes, having compassion and knowing we are humans at the end of the day, and it's impossible to live a life that is full alignment 24/7 all of the time. And we just get better at noticing when we're out of alignment and coming back into alignment faster. And I think that's important, because I think people can get the idea, or I used to have the idea of, like, oh, alignment, it's this place you find and then you're there, rather than the ebb and flow of life.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes the getting off course and those challenging times, we learn a lot and then we have a lot more gifts to give and to share, wisdom to share when we get back into alignment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always remind myself in the struggle times that, like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm learning the most. This is where I'm growing the most. And absolutely, that's what we're here to share with the world. And that's where a lot of our gifts come from. The biggest struggles in your life are often what people teach on, or what people share around, or coach around, or whatever your area of expertise is. And um I think that's the beauty of being a human, is going through the experience. Because I always catch myself wanting to hold on to the highs when I'm there, but we can't feel the high of the high without the contrast of feeling the low of the low. And life is an ebb and a flow. And um, it's all a part, yeah, it's all a part of the magic, which is easier said than done when I'm in one of those lows. But as I said, now I know how to not resist it, which takes me out of the low so much faster.
Well, we're getting to our time, but before I ask the final questions, is there anything else on your heart to share today?
Yeah, I think just to encourage people to keep doing the inner work. And it really is the biggest gift you can give yourself, and then in turn all other humans around you, because it is this beautiful ripple effect. But it is so worth it. And at the start, it feels really hard and really scary, and you don't feel like you're getting much traction. Um, but when you really put these practices in place and do the deeper work of feeling, Nicole, I love your story of that being such a powerful change, of actually feeling the feelings and the emotions. And that's where things really shift. And I found my inner freedom through doing this work. And no one can take that away, that inner freedom and that joy and aliveness. being in a place where I'm able to share my gifts with others. It is so fulfilling and such a joy, and everyone can get here to a place of alignment and joy. And of course, we're all humans and we have the full spectrum, and there's still struggle, but it's also with so much more ease and flow. And so if you're on the journey, starting the journey, wherever you are, just it's so worth it to do this inner work and surround yourself with a community of people who are also doing it, because it's so inspiring and uplifting to see others. And also it makes the struggle more normal. It normalizes the fear and the self-doubt and all of the other shit that comes up through this process, right? And so yeah, that's been a super helpful part of my journey, is being around others who are also on this journey.
Yes, I relate to that 100%. Having community, being able to share, you are the product of the people you spend the most time with. So if you want to be more intuitive and like learning about yourself and really digging deep, having that community around you is just naturally going to be part of the conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Katt, what do you wish more people knew about you?
I love this question. What do I wish more people knew about me? I think I wish more people knew maybe the transformation I've been on and been through, because people meet me today and they think I've always been this version of Katt. And I did definitely most of my life I have not been this version of me, and I continue to be deeper layers of authenticity that come out and continue to come out. And it's not that I've reached full authenticity again, it's this journey, but I definitely was very disconnected from myself, from my gifts, my magic, my joy. I was numb most of my life, and that is one of my biggest gifts, I think, is this innate joy and lightness that I can bring to healing spaces and to heavy topics. I have this joy and this lightness that others have reflected to me. And to think that most of my life I was numb to feeling my emotions and was also numb to my joy. And that at any point in our lives that can change, when I chose myself and chose to do the work and to put myself first or as a priority in my life. And it was a journey. It was a rough journey at first, for sure. But I like to share that with people, because I remember at the start of my journey how hard and impossible it felt. And we all have this inner joy and love and lightness within us. So yeah, that I have definitely not always been this version of myself.
What is your current mantra?
My current mantra is don't rush. Go slow. I one of my bracelets, I have a tortoise, a little tortoise on my bracelet to remind myself to maybe slow down. That's a better way to say it. Slow down. There is no rush. And when I take slowing down and taking aligned action gets me there so much faster than doing busy unaligned action. But that's my mantra. I have to keep reminding myself, because I catch myself whenever I'm in a spaciousness. My go-to is like, just do, because doing is better than doing nothing. And it's like, no, go slow, because going slow is faster.
If you could tell everybody in the world one thing and they would receive it, they would fully like understand it, integrate it, what would that thing be?
Love heals everything. So when we can love our patterns, love our shadow, love, like healing happens in loving presence with others, but also to ourselves. And so if there's something you don't like about yourself or a pattern you're annoyed with, it shifts when we can bring love to everything. That's what heals.
People want to connect with you. How can they do that?
Yes, people can find me on Instagram. It's Katt.Grant. I also have a website, kattgrant.com. I do workshops on a regular basis. So I'm just about to launch the next one, which will be in early October, I believe. So that'll be on my Instagram. So you can follow me there, and that's where most of my updates are.
Excellent. And those will all be linked below in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and share with the audience today your wisdom, your journey.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much, Nicole, for, sharing your gifts with the world and hosting this podcast and using your voice and inviting others to use theirs and creating this space. It's so inspiring watching you and your growth and how you show up on Instagram as well. And such a privilege to be a part of your podcast and this conversation and just have these open conversations, which I know helped me so much at the start of my journey and continue to help me and can help others wherever they are in their journey. So thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode or found value in it, I invite you to leave a 5-star review, or share with a friend. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.